Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast, is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale and Clark Pro. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Jennifer Zydunczyk. Jennifer is the Divisional Director of Dining Services at Medford Leas. Jennifer, thanks for joining me today at Tips from Trestle.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. It's great to see you.
So we're here at the Senior Dining Association Conference. And so the first question, tell me a little bit about your conference experience.
It is fantastic. This is my second opportunity to attend. I was here in Orlando 2 years ago.
Okay.
Right, at a time when we were all meeting and talking over Zoom every other week and really trying to support each other and problem solve. And I've been a member ever, since that time, and have asked to be part of the planning committee, and the experience is wonderful. It's great to have an organization focused on senior dining.
Yes.
I feel like we're left a little bit behind by the hospitality industry, and it's great to see me here with all these wonderful vendors that have come out to support Harris and the organization and learn about senior living and really what we're all about and the great things that we do. And it's just wonderful seeing familiar faces again, meeting new people, exchanging ideas, solutions, and just spending a lot of quality, great time together.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in another podcast. I was like, it's great to have a group that we can commiserate with that totally gets the things we're trying to do and be successful with. And this, I think that's why this is such a valuable thing. And so division director,
yes,
but Medford Leas is like a single site PCRC. So tell me a little bit about your role and what you do there and how that works.
Absolutely. So I have been in the senior living industry for nearly 40 years. I was an individual, like many of us here, who started as a server when I was 18 years old. And I've been in senior living ever since. Worked my way through education, which was a wonderful opportunity. And 17 years ago, I joined the team at Medford Leas as part of their leadership team. So there are 8 of us as division directors that work directly with the CEO. And my responsibility is the charge of the dining services. We say dining services, but culinary, nutrition.
Yeah.
I also handle corporate compliance. We do have a short-term subacute rehab. So, Medicare funding, et cetera, that comes in. We have a response. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, that's a unique little add-on to director of dining.
I like my policy. So, when you're in a smaller or single site organization, you can take on many hats. And I think that's a really great way to develop your skill set, add to the community in a different way, and just learn and grow as an individual. So it's been a really great experience being in this dual role, which is wonderful. But my love is food and has always been food and hospitality and service to people.
Yeah. And, when we were talking earlier in the conference, one of the things that clicked in our conversation was you were talking about the renovation you were going through, and we commiserated a little bit about that. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about was, how do you go through that process, right? And so when you're preparing for renovation, because, let me preface this for the listeners. The reason I think it's so important is that we are in a market right now where there's not a lot of new building happening. There's buildings happening, but there's a lot of opportunity for renovations and remodels. And we're going to be experiencing a lot of that. And so I guess from a dining hospitality perspective, that's why I think this is so important. And so when you think about the process. Well, first tell us a little bit about the project as it is now, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Sounds great. So we recently opened a cafe that was one of two formal dining rooms. And we were operating from a coffee shop that was funded by a donation from a resident years ago who said, the staff, the employees need to have a place to eat on their own. Well, over time, that grew into a resident and guest and employee area.
Okay.
And as our programming grew, when I came on board, we opened 7 days a week, 3 meals a day in that area. It used to be a Monday through Friday, breakfast, lunch operation. We also incorporated the menus from IL and AL into that coffee shop. So all of our menus and all areas are the same. And as our programming grew, the talent of our professionals in our department, sort of began exceeding our expectations, so to speak.
Yeah.
And also resident desires and preferences. Our food program was there, and we have a very strong program with a high resident satisfaction rate.
Yeah.
But we were really growing out of space in this coffee shop to really pull off what we needed to pull off. And we did not have the equipment we needed to pull off, in this particular area.
Yeah.
So also residents, their families were looking for updated space. We needed updated equipment. We were not attached to our main kitchen. So we were traveling with food through the hallways, through our coffee shop, very limited cooking. And our residents, as part of our resident surveys that we conduct regularly, we're focusing on that coffee shop and saying, this is an area where we need capital improvement.
Yeah. So when you see all of that, right? Like basically the operation, the program has outgrown the space, and residents say that, and you start doing that. What's the first step in that, right? Like you've assessed, all right, Houston, we have a problem.
Yes.
Right. So now it's like, let's figure out what the next steps are. So what did that process look like for you and the leadership team as you're trying to figure out, well, where do we even begin with this?
That's a really good question. I think, of course, we realized fewer residents coming for formal seated service. That will always be a part of our programming, but we realized we had such small space in our coffee shop, and we had 47% of our meals. And pre-COVID, we were serving 820 meals a day.
Wow. Yeah.
33% of those residents were dining out, taking out. So we knew that we had real estate that was not being used, and we had rooms sitting for 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
The formal dining rooms were open for breakfast and lunch and dinner years ago, and that just those areas closed down for breakfast and lunch just because, that the residents weren't dining that way anymore. Yeah. So we actually have an architectural team that worked with in the past, and that's worked with other like-minded and similar single unit communities who we're very familiar with. They put us in touch with a cultural consultant, and we conducted focus groups with staff, with residents, our food committee, our residents association. Marketing put together a panel of prospective residents on our wait list.
Oh, nice.
We met with residents of all different meal plan types. We have several different meal plans that we released, trying to find out what they were looking for. And it was the consultant interacting with them directly. So it was no sort of interference from us. It was, what we say in this room, we're looking to improve, we're looking to connect. What do you want?
Wow.
Because the last thing you want to do is build something that your resident in your community we're not going to be happy with.
Yeah.
And while you're building for the residents and staff, you need a great place to work and dine and take break and enjoy. You also have to look at what your market is coming in. So there's that fine balance of how do we properly take care of the residents who are here, who are not going to endure this process.
Right.
And also be able to resonate and draw people in from a marketing perspective. Occupancy high in your community.
One of the questions I'm curious about is when you're looking at doing the feedback, getting the surveys, did you get a lot of difference in information from current residents versus prospective residents? Or was there kind of some overlapping?
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Definitely overlap. It
Okay.
would definitely overlap the idea that we needed modernized spaces. We needed larger spaces. I think the residents that come to our community, our campus is an arboretum. So we're looking at a resident population that is very interested in nature, ecology, a resource conservation, but the needs were really very similar. I think we all know we will always, for example, have our meatloaf and mashed potato group,
Yeah.
but then we also have the ahi tuna group, or people who are looking for vegan and gluten-free items and more eclectic, world cuisines as part of our menus. So there really was a good amount of overlap, and we just got such wonderful feedback. And one of the things the consultant did was show pictures from communities that had been developed and said, do you like this? Does this resonate with you? Are you interested in a bar? Are you interested in a pub? Are you interested in flex space dining? What are you interested in a destination restaurant? And the feedback really was very similar from all groups, and we really heard that loud and clear. So I feel like we had our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
But that was such an important process. And of course, selecting the right people to work with, your architects, your construction company. We're working with a fantastic construction company, but also getting, the residents involved. Again, as part of the focus groups, they were very involved. When it came down to designing and having so many conversations and years-long process, during COVID, we weren't able to visit communities. So what our architectural firm did for us was send us a PowerPoint presentation about 10 different communities
Okay.
all up and down the East Coast and Midwest, and the designs that were implemented from color, decor, textures, equipment, and just we were doing virtual tours.
Oh, okay.
And,
Yeah.
at one of our committee meetings, we sat down together and said, and I felt really wonderful that they trusted us and trusted me enough to really tell me what they felt and what they liked.
Yeah.
And whether it was down to, I don't like that color blue, or, that's fantastic, or we like the feel with ambiance space.
Yeah.
And let's take that back to the architectural firm and the design team and say, this is what our residents want. This is what they want to see. And, we also have our own needs as well, but we can balance this and can provide an environment that everyone will thrill about.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was also knowing your community.
Mhm.
And perhaps when you're working with professionals, the architects, the designers, in some cases, they may have a go-to solution.
Right.
And you really do have to stick up for your community and what they've asked for.
Yeah.
If a bar is working really well,
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah. We had that conversation earlier about the bar, and I'm so glad you segued into that, because you're so true. Like the whole idea of, well, you usually need a bar because you're bringing in seniors who are boomers who want to buy alcohol, right? Like that's everybody listening would say, Yeah, that makes sense, right? Not everybody's going to buy a drink, but you're going to have a lot of them do that. You found something completely different because you did all that feedback.
Absolutely. So the current coffee shop, which is actually now also serving as our formal dining, because that dining room is being renovated.
Right.
So we've been touched by a lot of renovation over the last couple of years and will be for the next few years. We're thinking we would go work with local wineries, breweries, distilleries, perhaps look into a social membership license or work with their liquor licenses and utilize their services to run a bar, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that was not what our group was looking for. So what we've done is we've still utilized that design concept of a bar. There is bar seating, but the games are moving upstairs. Our shuffleboard table, pool table, ping pong table. We'll have game and card tables, but we will have liquor lock.
Yeah.
So beautiful, beautiful cabinetry. Residents may bring their own, lock it in the locker. We'll have refrigeration. We'll have plumbing. We'll have hand washing. We'll have places for residents to bring their things, store their items, and make their own drinks like it's their own home.
Yeah.
So, and we have the option. It's been designed as such so that if we ever do decide to go on full bar, we can retrofit the space for the equipment we would on the bar.
And I think that's really important, right? That's an aspect that when you're doing a renovation, I think that people need to think about is this is what residents now want, right? And you listened and you're making that happen, but you're also being one step ahead of it. Like, okay, maybe in 10 years from now, we may have residents that are like, why can't I sit down and get a rum and Coke? I'll give you $3 for it.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they want to be able to have that experience and thinking about that process for that space, thinking a little bit bigger. When an operator is thinking about a renovation and they're doing that, what are some of the obstacles that you guys dealt with or that you had to think about challenge wise, maybe in doing that, not just focusing on the here and now, but thinking now and for the future?
Staffing, of course, for everyone was a challenge. So some of our thought processes in perhaps switching gears a little bit was we have staff to run these spaces.
Yeah.
Actually. So we decided to go full bar. Do we really have the people to be able to pull that off at the time with our staffing shortages? I think what has helped us out over the years is consistently working with, for example, an interior designer that is working on our behalf with the design and architectural firm to really speak to what Medford Leas is and what our culture is. And while we have some really fun and great pieces of equipment and decor, trying to also build it in a classic way that's maybe transitional or a little bit modern, but respecting your environment and looking for materials and decor that will stand the test of time for some time. So we're not putting in these beautiful venues that are going to seem out of date within a few years. So being very conscious of that and having a designer that's worked specifically for us, contracted by us for many years was very helpful in pulling all of that together, which was amazing.
Yeah. About building those partnerships and those relationships because you can go and get a great designer off the street or a great architect, but if they don't know you and your processes and the way you do business, it can definitely be a struggle for sure.
Absolutely. And there were a few things when we were being designed, it's like, is this really going to go?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody has a hearth. We have a hearth. It's beautiful. It's a centerpiece of our new cafe.
Yeah.
And everyone loves it. Something as simple as made to order pizza sells like crazy.
Yeah. And so just about that experience and taking and elevating it to where it can be. So as we kind of wrap up our time here, when you think about all of the things that you just talked about and some of the things that you didn't get a chance to get to as far as the whole process, what would be the one takeaway you'd give to our listeners about this process?
Having gone through renovations before that may not have been successful, again, you really need to stick up for your residents and your own needs, get feedback, get involvement from your team, your staff, have them be a part of the design process, the equipment selections, having the resident buy-in, having that great resident feedback, and spending time with it. Real and feeling you are the customer ultimately. Your residents are the customer. Stick up for what you want, and don't be afraid to say, this may not work in our community, or that's not something we like, or let's go in this direction. And don't be afraid to put your ideas out there again and involve all your team members. Put it out there for people to listen, because maybe it might not be exactly what you end up with, but a little kernel of something will stick perhaps with your professionals that you're designing with and working with, and they'll say, well, we might not be able to provide this, but here's another way that we can look at this. So really that team discussion, professionals in the building, a very collaborative group. I think that's really, truly important. I think any insights with anything, have patience.
Patience.
Rome was not built in a day.
Very true. Very true. I think that last one is probably the most important with any sort of construction or remodeling. So, well, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of your project. And best of luck. And once you get closer to finishing up, I'd love to have you come back on and tell us how that has gone.
I absolutely will. And it's really been exciting to also come here and be able to share our great success right now and our happiness of going through the renovation with people that have been so helpful as part of the process. And that's what you get here at STA.
Yeah, well said. So, Jen, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Thank you for having me, Aaron.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestle. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.